Greetings, everyone.
Greetings, everyone.
What you're going to hear from the Wonders tonight is material that was developed in 1998 when we first started.
Yeah, way back then, eh?
Wow, yeah, right in January
Yeah.
1998, like right at the beginning of 1998.
Yeah, sounds a little different too,
Doesn't
it?
it ever?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things are a little bit calmer, a little smoother now. And of course, the electronics that we were using back then, our electronic equipment, recording equipment, versus what we've got now, it's like night and day.
Yeah.
It's like going back to the dark ages.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, isn't it?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. So the quality of the recording is different. The sound of the Wonders is different, but the material is just fascinating.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do is, of course, is to kind of present just a little bit. It's certainly not a complete portion or anything, but it'll give you an idea. The Wonders talk in this particular part that we're going to give you, they talk about the beginning of humanity all the way through to Atlantis. They
Wow.
just kind of talk all the way up to there.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really, really fascinating stuff.
From which point of view, dear friend, from which point in time would you like us to begin?
I would like to start very early, when the planet Earth was formed, and not necessarily, in other words, in its present appearance. Even on gaseous form, it will be acceptable.
One moment, please, dear friend. Okay. Yes. Okay. In order for us to speak to you at this point, we have to adjust ourselves substantially, and as a result, therefore, you will please recognize that there is an adjustment in our energy speaking to you. Now, this adjustment in energy is necessary in order to bring about a certain manifestations, certain information to your particular consciousness. Now, in order to first recognize that as planet Earth itself was formed approximately 7 billion years ago, there was a great deal of shifts occurring on a planetary perspective. In effect, dear friend, there was a great deal of interest in the formation of this particular galaxy and the formation of this particular planet from the perspective of other civilizations. A view of other civilizations, from other planetary framework, themselves viewed this particular phenomena as an opportunity and a possibility to bring about a certain development in consciousness, a development in physicality, and to use the opportunity as an opportunity to test out certain theories of evolution that themselves were unable to verify from the perspective of their own particular aspects, and in order to bring this about, therefore, use the opportunity of certain planetary manifestations in this galaxy at that particular point in time. Now, in order to bring that about, a certain development, certain opportunities were used to, quote, in effect, plant the seeds of physicality onto this particular planet. The planet itself, as it began to develop from simply what would be best described as the sun itself expanding itself and sending out a portion of itself outwards, as this portion was sent out outwards, it cooled, and as a result, therefore, in the cooling process, allowed certain concepts or certain interactions to exist on the particular planet. And consciousnesses at that point in time from other planetary systems involved could, in effect, view the planet as an opportunity to allow certain growth to take place. And as a result, a great deal of interest was expressed. Now, those, as a result, certain seeds, certain what could be best described as, in effect, life forms were impregnated into the planetary system at that point to allow it then the opportunity to develop into what could be best described as that which it is today. And in the development of this particular life form, as a result, and as the planet itself cooled from a large gaseous situation to a more solid form, more solid mass, certain developments occurred in the planet whereby the oxygen formation was created, atmospheric conditions began to exist as the gases cooled and separated into hydrogen and oxygen, nitrogen, etc., in order to bring about a certain situation, a certain environment that would be conducive to allowing the seeds of life form to exist. Now, from that perspective, therefore, life form itself was transplanted into this particular planet, did not begin from this particular planet. And from that perspective, therefore, it can be said and viewed that these particular aspects, these particular life forms brought about, as the planet itself cooled, brought about a certain additional cooling to the planet, which created, in effect, a certain circumstances conducive to expansion of life form. Now, as these particular life forms were expanded and created, certain plant materials began to form from what could be best described as not quite an amoeba-like life form, but rather a life form more conducive to a gaseous reality, more conducive to living in heat reality, yet at the same time able to survive in a greater degree in a more cooling environment. And as a result, therefore, certain vegetation began to take place. Certain bacterial events occurred, certain viral events began to occur, which began to form and create an expansion of life consciousness on this particular planet. Life consciousness, therefore, impregnated into the planet, began to expand and grow from there. Now, the system, that particular process itself, dear friend, as a result, therefore, expanded and grew far beyond that which had been anticipated. Originally, the attempt at that particular point in time was simply to allow a certain degree of life form to manifest itself, and as a result, those individuals that were involved in the seeding of the particular planet did not anticipate that particular growth to take place the way it did. It began to take on a form of its own. It began to become rampant. And eventually, as life form itself expanded and grew and mutated through its own particular genetic expansion process, through the DNA structure of life form itself, it began to take on shapes and certain other life forms that in and of itself separated from itself. Mutations began to occur. Mutations which, from your particular perspective today, are viewed as actual life forms, were in actual fact mutations from the original life form that originally began on this planet Earth. Now, as this process continued, as it moved, as it grew, so too did the particular process of expansion of the planet Earth. It cooled, it increased its atmospheric pressures, it increased its atmospheric tendencies to allow greater expansion of life form. Life forms involved with regards to water, life form involved with regards to earth, to air breathing, etc., began to occur and eventually developed. Now, no one civilization occurred or existed on this particular planet until approximately 2 billion years ago, at which point after a particular period of time in which a certain degree of existence, certain degree of measurement within the planet's existence had occurred, then at that particular point in time, civilization itself began to develop. Life forms began to develop, mutated far beyond that which had been anticipated into a particular civilization, a particular structure. Each individual structure being of a fairly intelligent perspective. Intelligence from the perspective of survival, intelligence from the perspective of awareness. As a result, therefore, a certain civilization began to take place, much to the consternation of those individuals that had planted the seed, that had seeded this planet at that particular point in time. They recognized that there was a certain development occurring on the planet of which they themselves were no longer able to manipulate or control, and as a result, therefore, chose to allow the process to occur without interference from themselves from there on in. At that point, a certain degree of civilization began to take place. Individuals, not a formation of the formative human Homo sapiens or even prior prehistoric man, began to manifest themselves. Civilizations that were far beyond that which, in effect, is viewed by your modern history. These particular civilizations existed on this particular planet in order, as a result of certain development, certain movement in their particular growth. They had had approximately 4 billion years in order to develop, we assure you. And as a result, therefore, a great deal of movement, a great deal of existence manifested itself. Now, allow us then to, at this point in time, to shift ourselves substantially, to bring about a new shift in this particular manifestation. Now, as we were saying earlier, as mankind itself, or as individuals in this particular existence, this particular society, began to manifest themselves on the planet, a certain consciousness developed amongst creation, amongst mutated creation. This particular consciousness itself developed to such a degree as to become aware of its own existence, and eventually, in the becoming aware of its own existence, chose to recognize how to survive, how to expand itself. In the survival and expansion of itself, this particular consciousness recognized that though there was a possibility and a probability of ingesting or reducing another existence, annihilating another existence in order to expand its consciousness, it chose not to. It chose to move from the perspective of energy rather than from the perspective of physicality. And this particular consciousness, it chose to manifest itself from that particular perspective at that particular point in time as partly physical, part energy. In effect, though the consciousness itself would not be recognized in today's terms, the consciousness itself, from a physical perspective, could be what would be best described as a developed physicality with a certain mandibular appearance, a certain extension appearance, able to manipulate physical form, able to hold objects, able to travel. However, it in and of itself did not meet with the physical perception of mankind today, and as a result, therefore, expanded itself to that particular point of consciousness to begin to recognize itself, and eventually, after a period of approximately 238,492 years, expanded itself to the point of recognizing itself as an awareness, as an entity. And in the expansion of itself as an entity, then began to recognize other entities around itself, and then formed a consciousness, a collectiveness to expand itself, to grow beyond its particular physical limited boundaries. The first civilization that occurred on this particular planet occurred at that point in time, approximately 1,293,496 years ago. At that point, the first consciousness, or first civilization, involved a number of entities that were of a certain physicality, not common to that which you yourself perceive, and who use their perceptions of energy, their perceptions of awareness, of manipulation of energy, to create an environment for themselves. As they created this environment, as this particular consciousness expanded and grew, it then provided for itself an opportunity for commonality with other entities, other consciousnesses, and therefore developed a community. In the community developed, then began the process of civilization. Certain boundaries, certain limitations were imposed upon interactions with each other to such a degree as to then provide a framework for interaction, for commonality, for the benefit of all. The qualifying mark for that particular civilization was that its particular perspective, its particular essence, was that all would work for the benefit of all in order to expand the growth of all, and therefore expand the planet Earth in conjunction with that. As this particular civilization moved and grew, so too did mutations of other particular life forms on the planet moved and grew, and as a result took on different particular aspects, different civilizations. And as a result, therefore, there came about a period of time, approximately 1,093,483 years ago, whereby a certain interference between each other began to exist. Space was becoming limited. A certain willingness to interfere with another began to manifest itself, and as a result, therefore, the original process that was created by individuals that seeded this particular planet took on a different tact, a different direction, and then began to manifest itself as a willingness to interfere in another's existence, in another's reality. And as this willingness began, so too did then the willingness to impose one's will on each other. And as a result, as this imposition of will took place from one civilization to another, so too did war begin, did certain willingness to interfere, to destroy begin, and as a result, those particular civilizations, three in fact, eventually, through their own particular development and processes, eliminated themselves. The benchmark of those particular civilizations was that they used the majority of themselves as physicalities, were of very little use to interact with each other. However, the energy aspect of themselves was very useful, and this resulted in a destruction of physicality, not so much a destruction of energy, a destruction of physicality. As a result of that, certain energy beings themselves reintegrated themselves and remanifested themselves a few thousand years later to recreate that which they themselves perceive themselves at. And in the recreation of themselves then began a new cycle of life essence. And as a result, therefore, through this particular process of, as we did say, of mutation, of growth, of change, of alteration, so too did life form alter and change and recreate itself. And as a result, therefore, another civilization based upon that which you yourself have perceived from the perspective of what could be best described as the dinosaur era, and began to manifest itself. True, the dinosaurs were of a fairly reptilian term it life force. And as a result, therefore, this particular reptilian life force manifested itself as a civilization on the planet to such a degree that once again, however, as a result of these particular energies, this particular reptilian life force, which was a development, a mutation of life force on the planet itself, and coupled with an interaction of the energy beings themselves, then began to manifest themselves as civilization, and to the degree that they could. However, their particular interaction was at a much lower level than the interaction of the original civilizations, for in effect, dear friend, they had lost a great deal of their own particular ability to remember or to recreate themselves in a more advanced form. And as a result, therefore, reptilian civilizations themselves interacted and in a fairly comprehensive and loving manner to each other, yet there were also a great deal of war going on. Now, those particular civilizations were eventually destroyed as a result of a freak accident with another planetary system interacting with this particular planetary system. And as a result, therefore, a great deal of change again took place. Life form was not destroyed, simply altered and shifted. And eventually, new life forms began, and new shifts took place. Man himself, through the particular process, mutated as a result of shifts in consciousness and as a result of energy shifts within those particular original entities from a few billion years ago. Now, eventually, through this particular process, a number of civilizations grew and manifested themselves. Some with intelligence, most without. From intelligence measured from the perspective of intelligence that you see yourselves at, the level of intelligence much different. As a result, however, advanced for their particular processes, their particular environment at that particular point in time. These civilizations manifested themselves some over periods of between 50,000 and 150,000 years, and eventually disintegrated as a result of shifts in the genetic structure of all life forms existing on the planet at that particular point in time, as a result of interactions with particular sun rays that move through the planet. Sun's rays, certain frequency, certain interactions with frequency from the sun created shifts in the civilization itself, in the genetic structure, that eventually dissipated certain civilizations from that. And eventually, over the period of a number of hundreds of thousands and millions of years, mankind emerged as a dominant factor in civilizations.